Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. I think we'll have to pass these mics around, just FYI. Um, hey, welcome to maybe one of the most popular panels. There's a seat right here, if anybody wants to take it. Obviously, Next-Gen C2 and the enabling layers of network and the infrastructure required to support that is a topic I think that has broad interest and broad applicability. So I just want to spend maybe a minute and frame up the discussion that we're going to have. So the next hour, we've got some real experts that are going to shed some light on kind of boots on the ground experiences and what's ahead relative to infrastructure supporting next generation command and control. And so with me today here on this panel, I've got Colonel Nicole Vinson. So she is currently at J3 DoD Cyber Defense Command. Think about that as old JHFQ Doden, for those of you that have been around for a while. But she also, before that, was at 18th Airborne Corps. So she's got a broad perspective, especially at the edge and what's needed at the edge relative to this topic of network and transport layers. We also have Colonel Renor Williams, G6 at 3 Corps. And before that, he spent some time at Southcom as well as on the NATO side. So he's got a unique and very beneficial perspective as well, given this issue around networks and transport layer and connectivity, especially from a partner perspective and a coalition standpoint. And then Lieutenant Colonel Cliff Hubbard, G6 at 4th ID. Thanks for joining, Cliff. So before his time at the 4th ID, he was Joint Staff J6, as well as spent some time out at USERPAC. So again, kind of varied perspective on this topic that we're going to discuss. And then last, Major Andrew DeLucio. He is at the 25th ID. Traveled the farthest to join us, I think, probably. He's got a unique perspective, obviously, there as they're adopting Next-Gen C2, but also perspective of C2 fix and how that's been going. So, as you think about questions to ask him, think about that in mind. So, just to set the stage before I turn it over to the panel for some quick intros, let me just paint the picture of the challenge. So, we're asking the network to do some very hard things for the Army. Operate seamlessly in contested environments, denied environments, and deliver that assured connectivity across, from the edge all the way to echelon. And those are some hard problems that folks like these leaders are solving, as well as some of you out, as I look in this room here, are solving. It's got to be resilient, secure, able to operate at multiple echelons. And it's it's an innovation challenge. It's a technology challenge. We were talking a little bit before. It's also has lots of interesting challenges from a .mil-PF perspective, which you'll probably hear about as well from these folks. So I'd ask you, as you hear about their perspectives, be thinking about questions that you have to get their input and wisdom, as well as perspective on challenges. Also from an industry standpoint, how you could help, as well as bigger Army and how they're synchronizing all these activities. The way it's going to work is I've asked each of them just to give 3 or 5 minutes, what's top of mind for them relative to challenges that they see, things that they've experienced, potentially where industry could help in a general sense, where they need both technology as well as other material. As well as organizational and doctrine perspectives. So you're going to hear that from them. I've got a couple of questions, and then we'll go into audience Q&A, and there will be a roaming microphone around here. So that's the setup. And let me first go, Colonel Vinson, to you, and get your perspective and top of mind.
I guess it was on already.
Good.
All right. So, all All right, so welcome everyone. Thank you. It's really impressive to see everyone come out, and I think we're going to share a lot of lessons learned that we've all experienced. I would say some of us for a little bit longer, and then as Fourth ID is just getting next gen C2, he's got a little bit different perspective than some of us that have been dealing with the data and the transport for a little while. They already mentioned that I was 18th Airborne Corps G6. I did that for 2 years, and then I just moved up to the best acronym that we could have came up with, DCDC, or the Department of Defense Cyber Defense Command. So it is a really big shift of gears for me, but it is a true blessing because I do see where we can start coming together with more of a cyber and security perspective as we go forward, specifically with the rollout of commercial capabilities. I think it's a different way that we have to think about our partnerships with our industry partners, because we have to do security. We have to talk about how we're gonna, how do we respond to outages, et cetera. Those are the kind of things that I don't think we haven't really set standards in place yet. So I think as next gen comes online, and it's a lot of industry from not just the transport layer, but you remember, if you think about next gen C2, it's supposed to be the holistic view. So from the data to the applications to the transport, and we're doing a lot of commercial integration into that. So that's my biggest focus, is like, how are we going to do this with industry? How do we partner? How do we make it secure? How do we think of the defense of the network holistically, the defense of the data, the defense of the applications as we move forward? And I would say from my experiences from 18th Airborne Corps, my biggest focus at the time was really on the transport. A lot of you probably here know or have heard it today. Like, we didn't crush the zipper at our installation, but we did at 18th Airborne Corps. But it was a good thing, right? So with every challenge comes an opportunity, because with that we realized that the zipper infrastructure needed to be done a little bit differently. So we made some modifications, and I think what you've seen since then, which has been a little bit over a year, is Netcom and the broader team and DISA has taken a hard look at what our transport looks like. And not only are we using circuits, but we're also starting to move to more cloud-based capabilities. So again, with every challenge, we're seeing a lot of great opportunities, and it's great to be here on this panel.
Yeah, go ahead, Cliff.
Okay. Lieutenant Colonel Clifton Hubbard. I came into 4th ID last year. Been following Next Gen C2 through PCC 5. Went out last year for the experiment, and that was a battalion in the dirt rotation where they were testing, improving capabilities. A lot has changed since then, and now the PM is ready to move full force forward, moving into PCC 6 next summer in July. So that's our target on the wall. And I don't have the counter in front of me, but I think it's about 335 days till that date that we start it. We have the counter on the wall in division headquarters. That is our goal date that we are counting down to till when we're going to perform. Between now and then, kicking off this week, we have an Ivy Sting series for the division. We started with 0, which is training our staff on how to use applications in our environment. The hard part we have right now is we're getting the equipment, we're getting new applications, we're getting new tools, and we have to integrate all the new data layers into this environment to bring in the data that we need so we can see it. Between now and PCC 6, we'll actually conduct 6 Ivy Sting events, 1 Ivy Mass, which will be our risk reduction event about 1 month prior to going to PCC 6. And then we'll roll into the entire division in the dirt, bring in elements from all of our organizations within the division to validate the equipment we have. There is nothing holding us back as a division right now. We have fieldings going on currently at the southern border with 2nd Brigade. They are getting equipped with ITN that will then get a once-over update for the Next Gen C2. 1st Brigade is getting templated to get their equipment in Korea, while we have our DSB and our cab on the way to, one's already in CENTCOM, the other one's on the way to CENTCOM. So worldwide, we are going to field all this equipment with our organizations in country and then bring them back to home station while they're training on them, participating in our exercises this entire time. Come back, run through a final risk reduction event, and then move into PCC 6 to show what we can offer for the Army, so the Army can turn around and start fielding this prototype to every division following, starting in FY27, I believe is the target, to start in FY27 and complete the Army in the next couple of years. So it's an exciting time. It's stressful because everybody wants to know the answer now. What's the right number of radios for every single unit? And we're coming up with our best guess. We will then tweak it as we go through these events in order to get the best answer for the Army so they can turn around and buy and field to the rest of the Army. Pass over to you, sir.
I'm gonna sit. So Colonel Williams, 3-core G6. I've been in 3-core G6 since last June. With Cliff sitting next to me, it's appropriate, right? We're tied to the hip, as he just mentioned, with PCC6. As 3-core, we'll be high common 4 IDs rotation for PCC6 next summer, and then also 1 AD within the core is also being fielded. NGC2 equipment in first quarter FY27. So as core, where we're looking at as a coalition core, as previously mentioned by John, we're looking at it from 2 perspectives as a HICOM. How do we integrate across the data layer down to the division, and then across the CDS to the coalition cores? We had some experience with that, lessons learned from 25-4, our recent warfighter, back in May, where we worked with 10 Panzer, 3 UK, and 1st French. We could say with on legacy systems. And I know 4ID's goal for PCC6 is no legacy equipment, all NGC2. So as a core, our challenge will be how do we manage that as a HICOM. Still legacy, I know NGC2, some of the greatness that is being provided to us as far as the COP tools within Panzea to link down to the downtrace units for the divisions, while still leveraging some of the Palantir tools that's going to come with that, with our U.S. forces. So as a whole, though, in sticking with transport, currently, right, let's say we're the legacy core. We still have SDTs. We fight to fiber, right, to leverage that big bandwidth pipe that we need to enable our commander to mission command and control. Network optimization, we know SD-WAN, and that's going to alleviate that issues. And then just being able to rapidly deploy a network, a resilient network to our commander. So with Pelio, as Cliff mentioned earlier in our brief, having that transport diversity is going to help with that. I'll pass it over to Andrew.
Hey, good afternoon, team. Thanks for being here today. As mentioned, my name is Major Andrew DeLucio. I'm coming from the 25th. I offer a couple of perspectives today. Most recently, having sat at the brigade level, I understand how the brigade is fighting in an archipelago. My brigade just also most recently went through 2 C2 fix rotations and followed up with those C2 fix assessments to align with everything that 101st did, as well as 18th Airborne Corps and 82nd. And so with that, now I sit at the Division G6 level as the Deputy G6. And the perspective that I can bring to the table today is again, how the warfighter fights in the archipelago, what made C2 fixes successful, and as we transition towards NGC2, really focusing on the transport layer, the data integration piece, really how we bring the whole enterprise to bear with industry and partners together, and really manifest the tools that the warfighter is using at the tactical edge with the data layer, again, to bring that whole network enterprise together and a fight with not only brigades as a division unit of action, but then bring that data layer into the joint fight as we go fight our next war.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So I kind of was thinking about two themes that I just heard. The uniqueness of some of the mission sets, geographies, time, challenges, different echelons, sometimes coalitions, sometimes not considerations are going to be important to solving this problem, as well as the fact that heard from each of them the network and the transport layers are really a key part of the stack. And so really that's the intent of the next 30 minutes here, is just to dive into and get their thoughts on how important it is to the entire stack of next gen C2. So I've got a couple of questions, and then again, be preparing your questions that you can hit them with, and we'll have a roaming mic. But my first question to this group, and feel free to anybody can jump on these. How does the Army navigate the balance between quickly adopting new technologies and performing, robust testing, validation that's needed for critical systems before they're rolled into the formation?
Yeah, so I'll tee this one up. Again, coming from a C2 Fix organization, what I would tell you is that there's often a healthy tension between the rapid adoption of technology and then the testing that is needed to ensure that the technology can operate effectively and efficiently in the roles that we're asking them to do. Commanders demand solutions at the speed of relevancy, and so when we add testing and rigor to that process, it delays the timeline it takes to get equipment and solutions that equate to capability down to the force. What made C2 Fix effective was that it placed the right people, i.e. the engineers and capability managers, with the customer or the warfighter at the tactical edge to iterate quickly, to gain the requirements, and then to expand on the solution, whether that be from a software base, modifying a configuration, or employing new hardware. And my experience, having gone through those two assessments, and it was phenomenal to see the teamwork and exposure to the to industry and the enterprise at large to be able to rapidly iterate through those solutions and those problem sets. I think I'd start there.
So I'll just add one thing to that, really. The commanders these days want the new technology. They want the latest and greatest, and the soldiers want it too. Whether they got a training manual that tells them exactly how to use it, or if they just figure it out. If it works better and they are smarter, the young kids, I'm going to call them kids, I feel old now. The young soldiers that we have these days are coming out and have grown up with this type of technology, and they want it in their hands. So you give it to them, and they will make it work. And the commanders are ready to accept risk to mission on those critical devices that, hey, it might only work 90% of the time, but unless it is some type of really high level risk, like I wouldn't take risk with nuclear command and control. Got it. But everyday activities, we already know that we take risk every day we roll out there with an STT, whether it's going to work or not. So they're willing to accept risk on newer technologies that, hey, as long as it works 90%, they're getting the same thing, but maybe the 90% that they have it, it's working better.
So I think I'll take it from a little bit of a different perspective, because when I think about emerging technology and how do we bring that technology on, one of the biggest challenges we had is with every new technology, it comes with its own connection and it comes with its own data or sensing capability that you have to figure out, okay, it's on the battlefield now, where do I need to get that data? How am I going to get it to move? How much compute and store do I need? Is it authorized to go on the network? So yes, commanders want to have the new capability, but what we've had in the past is commanders not part of the risk discussion. So what I think you see now happening across the Army is where commanders are starting to get back into that risk discussion, not just risk to mission where they've been focused, but risk to network and risk to mission. So that balance of, does it make sense for me to get this capability on the network based on the mission set that I'm getting ready to do? It's a different paradigm that we're starting to make a turn where we're bringing commanders back into, because they own the risk at the end of the day. But what we've done over the past is like the network has been to the side, and you would have to go through a separate process of, can I add something to the network? Where now you're starting to see the paradigm shift because commanders have came back to the table and said, hey, I own the risk at the end of the day. If somebody dies, it's me. And if it's because I can't get some capability on the network, that's my responsibility. So I need to be part of that discussion. So I think as we do this emerging technology, you have to think of it from the full risk. And I think commanders are ready to take that on because they are very technically savvy. There's no more of our commanders that are out there that we can say that they don't understand technology, because they do understand technology to the point where they're challenging us to be better in our game and upping our skill set. And then the second piece is we have to truly understand the architecture so we know how to move that data, because you have to have that conversation with the commanders. You'll hear a lot about data platforms, but if you put a data platform in the wrong spot, you're not going to be able to use it, and people are going to have the expectations that they can have visibility that they need to execute a mission. And then when they go to do it on the transport layer that they're given, it fails. And those are the kind of discussions that commanders have to have and understand truly what the architecture looks like, so they know what they can and can't do at the time of need. And I'll pass the mic on that one.
The only thing I would add, right, as Nicole mentioned, with the will be a big help with the commanders now, corps commanders now being AOs of their tactical network will help make that a more agile, responsive process with integrating new emerging technologies and software onto the network. And then another issue that we have is where that Cliff is going through right now in 1AD, as well as just once we're receiving the equipment, that NetNef, aligning that over their current training calendar, just ensure that it's an adequate amount of time to ensure that the soldiers are well-versed, trained on said equipment and software to employ for upcoming deployment or exercise, because there's nothing worse than 2 weeks outside of a warfighter to be told, here's a new piece of equipment that we want you to experiment during said exercise to validate. So that's all I have for my end.
Yeah, I got a follow-up maybe on that one, since a couple of you mentioned NetNef and kind of training related to how are you guys balancing achieving your training objectives with, inserting some of these new technologies and equipment?
I'll dive on this one. So with our setup for 4ID, the fielding schedule, we have laid out our training calendar and objectives. The PMs and the trail boss and everybody is working in unison right now to lay out what the training objective is, what equipment we need, and get the equipment delivered with training time to bring it into experiment and testing for each of the Sting series as we move along. We have worked with them, and it's not the PMs driving the timelines. It is the unit and organization now driving the timeline for what we want to be able to achieve, with informed decision from the PM back to us as whether they can make it in time or not. And then we adjust the training objectives to meet what equipment we'll have on hand at that point in time. Same time, they're fielding stuff down the border right now and delivering it, and they're training on it and putting it into use the next week for real live missions. And the final piece I'll say is we're getting away from the term NetNef. Most of this stuff is equipping, not fielding. Fielding is a lot of integration, everything going into it. This is equipping for experimentation. So it's getting equipment on hand. Some will come with training. Some will come very limited training for us. And we will then train through our exercises internally and have hands-on personnel. So it might not be a formal classroom session for each piece of equipment we get.
No, I think what you kind of hit on was, and I'll speak from when I was at 18th, and what I found with Scarlet Dragon is, like, there was an expectation that you learn as you go. It wasn't that you had to show up for an exercise and had to be 100% green across the board. You had to be able to communicate, but then there was also some understanding from the commander's perspective, because they wanted to get after challenging things. They knew at the beginning it wasn't going to be perfect and pristine. And you develop that learning culture. And I think that's part of the success that we need to continue to do as we go forward. Because if you think about how quickly technology changes and how hard it would be to train on every single aspect of that technology, you kind of heard it. Like, there's some things you're going to get some training on, and there's some things you're going to get a lot of training on. But when you think about the force structure that we have we're getting the new soldiers in that have that tech savvy already, we can start expediting a lot of that. So it's not the standard cookie cutter approach. We can be flexible and iterate within our own units. There's a lot of online training with the different partner industries that we have. So there's just a lot more breadth, I would say, and opportunities for the training. And we're just looking at it as a different perspective. And I think going from a learning organization as part of that culture is critical as we move into iterating with technology.
Yeah, no, sir, ma'am. I like what you highlighted there, and sir, you keyed on something with the equipping versus fielding. I think that's important to highlight as we talk about a NetNef with a program of record solution versus an equipping with a COTS solution. those solutions sometimes come with and without training. And I would say the issue isn't with the initial training package, it's with the sustainment trail, right? What we don't often see is when we go through a net and a nef, or a nef and net, that's a one and done solution. And what we see is we have the ebb and flow of transitioning soldiers and leaders every 36 months or so. That net gets us through about 18 months before we have to, again, iterate and go through another training focus. And when you have COTS type solutions that we're equipped with as we go through what we call NGC2 and events like this, it requires us to sometimes or often use different types of funding strategies, PEMTech funds, et cetera, to either buy and pay for training packages to come out. And sometimes you have to get creative as to you might not be able to afford that industry partner to come out and train. You've got to send a skilled operator forward, and they've got to get the train-to-train package and come back and train others. What we're seeing with our workforce is that these soldiers are coming out of the schoolhouse with the essentials, the fundamentals to understand the signal flow, and they're adaptive, right, and resilient. And so with that, we've got to have confidence in their ability that they can rapidly pick up a piece of solution in a kit, understand its capability, understand what it can do to solve the critical gap that commander may have, and then identify solutions via a training package of sort. But I think when we talk in education, you're absolutely right, sir. It does go with the idea of an official net versus an equipping strategy that may or may not come with an actual training package. Over.
So let me ask you one more question, and then I'll open it up to the audience. So a couple of you mentioned data. So there's a lot of demands, bandwidth demands on the network and infrastructure. What are your thoughts regarding how do you prioritize that? Where is it prioritized? Any challenges that you've been experiencing or foresee relative prioritizing, some of these new technologies and their claims on the bandwidth?
I'm glad they nominated me to take this one, right? So I think when you start talking about data, to make data work, you have to look at it from two perspectives. You got the stuff that's going to be on-prem that you got to move around, and then you got obviously to actually get after data and be able to implement AI, you got to move to the cloud, right? So it changes your full architecture and how you look at communications. Because where we were used to at the Army, we would do everything at a LAN and we'd have one big pipe going out. When you start having every user go out because you're using cloud-based systems, data platforms that are reaching back to the cloud, it makes you change how you can actually architect and think through whose data is going where do I need to pull it from. So the variety of different data platforms that are going to reach out to different clouds, meaning not the same even environment, and then they have to come in, and then they're going to come together somehow, some way to present to the commander. And there's no LAN doing that because they're all connected back to their source going out to a cloud environment. So I know there's a large push, and I think this is where industry really can lean in and help us, is like, how do we balance that hybrid approach? We talk a lot about hybrid, but I don't think we fully have got there of how do we develop hybrid cloud capabilities and get that data where it needs to be, where you can move it around. Because we were talking before the panel started, is like, you could ask a commander all day long, what data do you need? And they're going to look at you, I need everything. And if you think about it, if you walk around with your phone every day, what do you have? You have all the data you need every day. So why are you asking me what data I need? So they want access to everything. So we have to be able to figure out, what does that hybrid approach look like where they can get the data that they need when they need it? And over time, I think it'll sort itself out. But we have to get to that aspect of it. And underlying that hybrid, back to what the topic of this panel was, is you have to have that resilient transport. And we hinted on it with the software-defined networking. And I would tell you, in my personal opinion, I think that's probably the number one thing that we got to really get out there, because in order to be able to change not only for the transport to work and bring it together and separate it out, go to a different band. The one thing that we haven't talked a lot about on this panel is the threat that's out there. And think about your signature. And you have to be able to adjust your signature based on the threat and where you're at in that environment. And we have to be able to sense and see what we look like in that environment when it comes to transport. So we haven't really talked about the EW aspect of the transport, but I would say that is probably one of the other critical elements when it comes to transport. Yes, we have to be agile, but we have to be agile to overcome the threat in which we're in.
So yeah, pulling that thread, I'll just look back at our two recent warfighters, 25-4 and 25-5. As far as the EW signature, we were able to experiment. I know we not advocating any tools, right? A multi-transport device that we put on our MCG, our striker for our commander, that could go from Pilio, Mio, I think had Cellular on there, and I can't remember the other transport, but quickly switch, right, depending on what the enemy is detecting, deterring, or destroying, right? So if we're single-threaded on, say, Star Shield, then depending on what the enemy, depending on the theater you're in, right, sort of drives your pace and how you maneuver through your pace during that operational environment, right? So we as Signal would say we can provide you with a robust pace, right, but subject to the enemy, what the enemy is detecting, deterring is how we're able to maneuver across that. So being able to provide us with that agile capability while limiting that spectrum, right, that signature would be advantageous to us, but also providing that robust pipe, tying that into like data management that's done at our NOSC, right? So we had our NOSC at 3 core for 25-4, combined embedded with 11 SIG, using our embedded tools, IQ Core, Elastic. We can monitor the data utilization in our attack lane. Just since we're on fiber, being able to establish those baselines, benchmarks in our red lines to say, okay, if we try to tie this emergent technology with this other emergent technology, we hit 700 megs in our attack lane, so that probably wouldn't work on Pilio, right? So we could quickly pivot to the GT3 after a battle rhythm event, talk to our ODT, on the fly, develop TTPs to where towards the end of 25-5, we start off at like 760 megs. We're down to like 260. But it's a whole effort across the staff, right? Just learning, being more proficient on these emergent technologies. And then as the SIG, still using your basic tools that's provided to you to manage that, and then advocating that to the staff, right? And then just continue to build upon. And like we told our DCGM for the next one, right? Let's not try to use these two devices during a brief. Let's just go down to one to find where that sweet spot is to when we're forced to fight off of one means of transport that is not as robust as fiber. We know what our left and right limits are.
So I have more questions for this group, but I'll save them that and turn to the audience. Mary's walking around with a microphone. That's why you guys paid the big bucks to come to this panel session to ask questions. So who's got a question?
Hey, thanks. Clifton, you talked about you want to have no legacy systems, and that's your end goal. Is that because you perceive there'll be some friction if you bring in legacy stuff, or is it just to get a holistic view on it? And then me, coming from a Compo 3 world, that's all we have right now. So I'm excited about next Gen C2 and fieldings that are happening, but I'm concerned if I have to support a combatant commander and I have legacy equipment and they've got new kit, then how do you see balancing that friction between what you do internally with your data tagging and how does it get to legacy systems or to coalition partners, as you mentioned, Colonel Williams?
So we will not have anything. We will not have legacy within the exercise. There will probably be some level of legacy servers in the background that still run and won't be torn down off the network, because this is an experiment. So I am not going to tear down the warfighting network should we go to war today and something pop off. We need to keep our same systems because we might be fighting on it tomorrow. That being said, when we go into experiment, we are going to run 100% on the next gen C2 infrastructure, include the data. We are working with the PCC6 team and in the planning conferences right now on where the merger and triggers will be to switch the data from one side to another to allow stuff in or out. And it's really going into who's playing in that exercise. And then long-term wise, it'll probably be something happening at the enterprise level that will do that transition between the two systems, because really all next gen C2 is doing, it's really pulling in data from all these other systems that already exist out there in the world that you would typically pull into your DDS and then distribute from your DDS down to all your mission command systems and other systems out there. Instead, no, it's coming into a cloud environment, into the integration layer, and then that's distributing it through basically a different type of distribution mode. Does that answer the question? All right.
Other questions? Raise. We got one back there. We got one over here.
My first? Okay. It's kind of a softball question. Colonel Trevino, Daniel. But Colonel Vincent mentioned earlier about risk and buying the risk down. How long did it take for all the panel members until you started to feel comfortable with the systems that you were currently part of this next gen C2 construct? And then from your assessment, how long did it take until your commanders started feeling comfortable with that environment or that architecture?
I'll jump on this one because so General Ellis came on board this summer and kind of designed this architecture. So he's very comfortable with it. And I've gotten very comfortable with it, especially with the amount of backing it is, as you can see here by the crowd and how much interest there is in it. Everybody's focused on it. It is not something that the PMs, the cyber center, nobody's going to let this fail, because everybody knows we need the next step, and the Army is swinging really hard into it. So everything's there, all the support is there, and everybody's going to be there to support us and the experiment throughout, so we can set the right conditions for the Army.
I'll just go really quick because I'll just use my personal experience of, I heard a lot about some of the data platforms that were out there, but I only, was on the periphery kind of watching, didn't really know how to use it. But I was actually surprised that how quick, when you're embedded in it and every day is based on data and everything you talk about is about data, how quickly the commanders, the entire staff get on board and start learning so fast. But the thing that I took away from it is I think you kind of hit on it. It's top driven, right? If the command says we're going data and you need to learn these capabilities, you get on board and you do it because you have to, I always like to say, survive, right? But it's amazing how quickly it's not that challenging if you put your mind to it. You do the research, you get in, you jump in, and you just get after it. So I would say it took me a little while to learn the ins and outs of it and the language, but that to me is almost like when you go to a new job and you have to learn the new acronyms in any military organization. It's kind of the same concept. If you want to start getting into data centricity, you learn the new language and the new ways of doing business, and before you know it, you got it. So I think it's definitely doable. And go ahead.
I was just going to say the same thing you said, right? It's top-down driven. Our core commander said, this is what we're using. This is the direction we're going to move out into. Did not expect perfection on the first day, but did not also want to see a clunky process. So the staff was, like I said, iterative processes. We'd come together daily, work on TTPs, and it was just one unified effort to move out in the right direction. So it's easier when the command supports you and willing to accept the risks.
Good afternoon. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Brittany McCrone, the Deputy G6 for the 94th Army Air and Missile Defense Command. Has there been any experimentation with this new technology with the Joint Force? And is there any way that we've been able to ingest sister service data into our platforms?
Okay, so I would say when we start talking data and a lot of the platforms that we're using, I think they're innately joint. We start joint, and I think that's what you're seeing with a lot of the COCOMs adopting the same data capabilities across the board, where we're starting to see a lot of synergy. Cybercom right now is the last. I hate to say it, the last coming on board strongly with adopting. So all COCOMs will have the same data platform. So everything we're doing in the Army and going the route, you saw the contract that was released recently is aligned with the COCOM. So it's actually one of the first times, I think, holistically, that we're going from a joint perspective where it's from Army to joint and joint to Army that's interoperable. And I think we're allowed to do that because we're focusing on the data interoperability versus trying to tie a multitude of networks. We still have the network piece we got to clean up a bit, but this new approach I think is definitely getting there. And then with I would say our partners is the next step, and I would say we're working that already from the data perspective, especially in Europe and in OPACOM.
So yeah, tied to that, right? I want not the expert start off with that, right? But I do know the tactical data platform. As Nicole mentioned, that's being rolled out across the different services, right? And that will be the bridge between us and the coalition, because they will follow the same FMN standards, the same MIP standards. What's the other one that fires? It starts with a day. I'm drawing a blank right now. ABCANS, the MIP, the NIFI, all the different standards out there. Those are all being rolled out through the TDP. Nations come online, they're all following the same standardization so we can get the data across to our allies. I would say for 25-4, we use the legacy format of that. We operated off of, I think, FMN 3.0, MIP 3.3, but TDP, I think, will be 4.4. So that is the bridge going forward in future to integrate across the joint force and also with our allied partners as well.
So the only thing I'd add with that is, when you think about it, the joint condition is CJAD-C2. So underneath CJAD-C2, the Army's take on that was Project Convergence. So when you look at everything leading with Next Gen C2, bringing it into Project Convergence, Capstone 6, that is the event. So everything on the back end should be joint capable.
That's correct. And I was hesitant to answer the question because I know like we got 2 weeks. I think it's August 26th is the next middle planning conference for PCC 6. So we're still working on the architecture and how that's going to look like for PCC 6, which is still next summer in August, right? So in the next few months, we'll get a more refined network and how everything is supposed to look. Right now, we can just talk in theory.
Scott Kelly, JMA Wireless. Just curious, what role do you see emerging technologies like 5G and 6G private wireless in the future architecture of Next Gen C2?
5G is definitely being brought in for private 5G and commercial 5G. It's being looked at, I believe, in all the EU end user devices and the tablets that we'll be using for it. They'll be 5G enabled. They'll also have Wi-Fi. They'll have traditional wires, so you can wire them in, hardwire. And then it's a mixture of transport once you get out of there to get back to Geo, Pleo, using a MNA network or Wi-Fi along with the 5G. So it's implementing all that to get your transport diversity out there and get the data to where it needs to go.
Yeah, I'd echo the same sentiment. I do see that there's 5G in the space, right? Especially at the tactical edge. You can't have enough tools in the toolkit. The problem that we are seeing is just, and I think Colonel Vincent mentioned it, the impedance and the effects of the EM space, right? When you talk about all the different types of waveforms, all the different types of signatures, whether it's 2.4 to the 5 5G, it all affects one on top of the other. So operators, communicators at Echelon need to understand, how you manipulate that space and what that looks like from a, transitioning auto pace function. Is everything on all at once, or do you cycle through your frequencies, your spectrum, your waveforms to get at a capability and an operational need? I'd say that in the 5G space, we operate in bubbles, especially at the lower tactical edge. And what we're finding, especially in the jungle environment that I'm part of, is that you can't have enough of that bubble, right? Our bubble just doesn't go far enough. So we see a need for a localized 5G network, right? And then build upon that with greater waveforms within a spectrum dominance piece that gets you a little bit further out. To the transport piece, 5G is clearly a big part of our transport layer. It is a clear function of one of our pace components, generally an alternate or contingency at that lower tactical edge. If you don't have that up and out bubble, then or that component, then I can't get that data backhaul. And so when you look at the operators at that lower tactical edge, the only thing they have with them is what they can carry on their body. And right now we're seeing a lot of those hotspots, those MiFis, those routers. At the greater C2 nodes, that's when you see the greater capability at 5G component. But I'll leave that there.
Yeah, we got one right here in the middle.
Hey, Chief Hefner from 3ID. So we're talking a lot about transport diversity and making the transports more robust coming back, but they're all generally aggregating at the same place, like in an RHN. Is there any talks about how to diversify that so that in a LISCO fight, that's not going to be an easy first strike target?
So the answer is yes. And the new product that we were just out yesterday looking at, it's the XLDT, which is a replacement for a unit hub node. Very similar as far as idea, 2 giant satellite dishes with the baseband to land all your shots. So we are bringing that out to 4ID. Expected October, November, maybe as late as January, but we're going to get out there to land all our geo capabilities. And then I'm trying to think of the new routing piece, virtual, SD-WAN to route back from the RHNs. So we'll have that inside the division headquarters to do all of our routing, virtual routing out.
Yeah, I think you hit it pretty well. And I think when you look at the transport that DIS is doing as well as Netcom's doing, I think they're relooking how, and they have been talking about the central points and of challenges specifically with the regional hub nodes for a while. So I think you're going to start seeing we know they've beefed up the regional hub nodes a lot, but they are looking at versatility, and they talked about the hub nodes down at the division levels, and then they're just relooking that architecture in general.
Yeah, we had a meeting last Friday with ACOM Network and Transport with Colonel McDonald, and part of the comments that was brought up, to your point, right, is just having diversified landing spots for our transport. When we talk MilSatcom, right? So it's RCHNs, it's the THNs. I know this has been a discussion for the last couple of years. Do the THNs reside at the division? Will they reside at the core? Right? Is there enough funding to equip all the divisions with THNs, right? As a division G6, I want it at division. As a core G6, I'm hypercritical, would like it at the core. All right? So, but yeah, it's to your point where we need that as far as when we talk transport for MilSatcom, how do we have diversity for those landing spots in a LISCO environment?
So the 25th has an XLDT, so it takes burden off of external sources. What we're also doing is we're piloting the VME or virtual mission enclave environment, right? So what that enables us to do is give us decentralized management of those enclaves, and as we put endpoint solution software on all our compute and edge nodes, we can do that decentralized management from the G6 shop so we can see all of the enclaves, whether that's our sensitive but unclassified encrypted environment, which right now is how we operate at the tactical edge, our NIPR or our SIPR services. And so again, that just enables us to do decentralized management operations.
I think we have time for at least one more, maybe two. Questions? We got one right here in front. For the panelists, my next question will be: what are you most excited about? So you can be thinking about that as a wrap up. Go ahead.
So because we are using new equipment, does that mean that the legacy equipment that's on the MTO will eventually come off? Because I know we're required to keep some.
So they're going to say no, right? This continues to be a challenge. I think it started with ITN fielding back in the day with 82nd that we still continue to have challenges with. And so I opened it while he was grabbing the mic because it is a pain point for everyone. So over to you.
Thanks, ma'am. So the 25th has been operating, especially at the infantry brigade combat team level. They have been operating without legacy. And when we say legacy, we're talking WinT increment 2 systems, at least for the last 18 months. The primary transport layer is PLEO with a mix of the 5G in there in that space. And those WinT systems, those legacy systems, have been sitting in a motor pool waiting for divestiture since that time, right? And so as we try and move forth with adopting new technologies, shifting the COTS equipment that the division has, taking a look at the integrated tactical network basis of issue that we have as a division and shifting that over across formation to make our division more lethal, to shift the enabler and functional formations away from the same technologies, the WinT technology. What you're seeing is that equipment that we consider legacy is just sitting there rotting as we figure out a way to either collect all this into a motor pool or ship it out on a vessel somewhere to make somebody else's problem. The answer is we don't have it yet. But I would tell you that there are still formations that are leveraging technology. We heard Compo 3 is still using it. Other formations across the division, whether you're NGC2, whether you're C2 fix, your enabler and functional formations are still a little bit behind your maneuver formations. So we must not forget that there are still formations that are still trying to learn and adopt to new systems, smaller aperture geoterminal dishes, though proliferated PLEO terminals may be across formations. So I don't think we've figured out the answer yet. They haven't shifted away from MTO, and we don't see that happening soon. But I know elements across the Army are trying to figure out that solution. And 25th, at least speaking from a personal standpoint, we hope to get rid of it soon.
We got time for one last question. Anybody have a question? Anyone? We've got one in the back. Go ahead.
How you doing, sir? Panel. I'm Marcus Jett from Al Cyber Defense. One question I have is, from your experience on implementing NGC2, how do you envision cross-domain solutions fitting into overall mission data flow, especially when it comes to traversing the enclaves as you flatten down to SBUE and go to SIPR-centric up at the higher levels? Where do you see that factoring in as far as the data flows with that and also with the joint fight? I know that kind of ties into the question that the Deputy G6 from NDA asked earlier. Sorry for the big softball there at the end.
So my view on this really is that we are focused mostly on SBUE, especially at brigade and below. sensitive but unclassified encrypted. That is brigade and below with very little access to SIPR, maybe a touch here and there for the intel side, but majority is not there. At the division and higher, it's going to end up being some secret, but not proliferated everywhere. What I envision as a device holder, if I have a tablet and I'm SBUE, I have an SBUE tablet. If I am a secret level user, I have a secret tablet, and that device does both my SBUE and my secret. It should be one device in my hand. I still only have one. The unclassified data comes up, I do whatever I need with it, and I send it back down. It goes to a CDS and goes back out. In a flawless environment, that's how it works. We're not quite there yet. I think that that's something they're trying to deliver, but whether it'll be delivered for PCC6 or not, I'm not sure.
So I lived in the world with cross-domain solutions a lot over the last 2 years, and I think the progress that's been made has been tremendous. And I think you hear General Ray talk about starting low and building up, which is a different way of looking at it. We've heard we overclassify information a lot, and we start high and we say nobody can have it. But I think what we're trying to do is flip that paradigm across the Army, where you build low, and then if you need to, you can go high, which then you can really start to tailor where those cross-domain solutions need to be. I think when you start looking at Next Gen C2, because of the technology that's been coming out, I think recently the Army just approved where you can do Microsoft Azure's cross-domain solution in the cloud. We know there's diodes that you can do with AWS. So there's all these different technologies when it comes to how we can move data at different classifications that are going to allow us to do things a little bit differently. So where you don't have to do necessarily everything on-prem, it can be done at back behind you, where you remove that complexity back. Are we in a perfect situation today? I would say no. We still have a lot of cross-domain solutions to make it work, but we are working to make that better.
So lastly on that, I know at least for 3-course perspective, they have a track-in that the CDSs will be aligned to the theater, right? So with us now being realigned from ForceCom to USARAF, we will leverage, like we did during 25-4, at the core level between us and the MICLIC, USARAF CDS, and that's how we will get stuff across from SIPR to USARAF's MPE or MPN network at, say, the core echelon. And I think, I could be wrong, at division, it's just, as Cliff mentioned, and below SIPR, brigades, SBUE. So that theater will provide the CDS for our integration with our allies.
All right, lightning round question. In 30 seconds or less, tell the audience what you're most excited about. This is a voluntary question. You don't have to answer it, but we have 2 minutes left.
We'll be excited to officially receive Star Shields in July. We've been slapped on the hand by ForceCom for the last 2 years. So that's what we're most excited about.
Probably most exciting, I've gotten comfortable with being uncomfortable with this change. It's a year rapid change between our struct changes and Next Gen C2, and it's setting the conditions for the rest of the Army with the BOI for everybody to continue moving on in the future and set what that prototype looks like for the rest of the divisions out there.
So I think I'm most excited about listening to the conversations just over today alone. I think if you look at where we were a year ago to where we are today, the conversations are completely different. And that just shows you how fast we're moving. And then the fact is listening to the people on the panel that we're actually getting after maneuvering the network and looking at it differently as a weapon system, and it's part of commander's decision cycle. So it's just a really exciting time and an honor to be on such a great panel with great soldiers.
I have been excited about the speed of which we've transitioned, and that continues to speak volumes as we go through Next Gen C2 and additional equipping and fielding strategies. And I can't say enough about the partnership that we in uniform have had up to this point with those in industry and those civilian partners, and just the speed at which we've transitioned just can't excite me any more than it already has.
Awesome. Thank you. To my panel here, you are all very, very busy soldiers and leaders. Thank you for taking the time out to give us a little insight into what your day-to-day looks like relative to infrastructure support to Next Gen C2. And can I get a hand from my panel here? And thank you very much.